Welcome to the Flex web series, Onboarding Basics. I'm your host, Marcus Merritt. This web series is designed for new customers of Flex or new employees of existing customers of Flex so you can get up to speed in using your Flex system quickly. Today, we're going to be talking about creating a quote. In a default system, the main financial document is called a quote, but you can rename this document. And if you're a new employee of an existing customer, you may find that yours is already named to something different, like estimate or proposal, and that's fine. But in our example here, we're going to use the default. The default is quote. For this, we just want to, on the main screen, go to the top right to this big plus sign. That's for creating new elements. And we're going to go ahead and add a quote. Okay. It's going to get us a pop-up in the middle of the screen, and we're going to start going down this list. Now you'll see that the cursor started here at name, skipping past the open closed and the quote number, because you don't generally want to do anything with those. For the name, it's just whatever we want to name this, this quote. You should probably have some kind of process in your company. I'm just going to call this demo quote. Okay. We see the status, and by default it is locked here, and that is going to be most of the time, and so we won't do anything there. The account manager automatically filled in my name and should do the same for you. If yours does not automatically fill in as you, assuming you're going to be the account manager if you're the one creating it, then you'll need to check on your user and your user settings. Check either with your system administrator or go back to the video or the article on adding new users in Flex. If for some reason you're creating this quote for someone else who is actually the account manager, I can highlight that and change that to somebody else, but we're going to assume that that is me. Next here, we've got these two fields, and these fields are very important. As we see by the red asterisk in front of them, they're some of very few fields that are required. That is our prep date and our return date. This is what Flex is going to use to calculate the availability of the equipment that is planned for this quote. Okay. And it's important we see on this name of prep date and return date rather than load in or show start, because the gear becomes unavailable from the moment we start prepping it, or at least when we load it on a truck, until we get it off the truck, QC'd, and back into stock. Okay. So we do want to plan for that time availability. So if, for example, this show is on loading in here on Friday, well, my prep date is probably going to be tomorrow, that 29th there, and I'm going to say, well, they'll be unavailable by the end of day. Okay. If maybe let's say it's Friday and Saturday and then comes back, well, my guys aren't working on Sunday, and so they're going to come back and put it away on the 2nd here. Okay. So that's what I'm going to set for that. Now, this next field is department, and in a default system, it's just going to say department 1, department 2. Some other companies may have turned this off. That's fine. The key on this is it's just a way as a filter or a sorting tool to kind of control different revenue streams. The most common thing that I'll kind of see is some people would control maybe production events versus virtual or hybrid events, maybe something like corporate versus nonprofit versus social, those kind of things. I'm not generally thinking of department as the audio, video, lighting, because in a lot of shows, a lot of quotes, I'm going to include some of all of that. So that's not actually helpful. Okay. For this, I'll just pick department 1 so I have something. On this default time and default pricing model, these are very related to each other. The default pricing model is what price is going to be pulled on the equipment. Now, in a default system, most commonly that would either be day rate or maybe week rate. I've added some other pricing models into this system that would not be likely in your system, but day rate's fairly common. And then the time is the amount of time I'm charging for that. It sometimes can be thought of as the multiplier, and that is fine, but do note it is designed as a measure of time. And so for some models, it cannot be multiplied because it is a measurement of time and not just a multiplier. In this, we're going to say that we go in on Friday and do some rehearsal, and then the event is on Saturday. And for that, I charge a half day for rehearsal days. So I'm going to set this at 1.5. And I just do that to show that you can put this as a decimal. It can be to 2 decimal places. I could put 1.25, whatever that way. I'm going to leave that at 1.5 for this example. Now, for most default systems, corporate identity is not going to be here, but if you're one of companies who have multiple corporate identities, you would have that option to select that in there. I've put that in here as to demonstrate kind of some different ideas for companies, but I'm not going to really get into the detail on that today. The next one here of referral source currently is going to be empty, and that's going to be empty in any default system, but that is designed as basically marketing tracking. If you're doing some forms of marketing, whether they're newsletters, whether Google ads or LinkedIn ads, Facebook ads, whatever, and you want to keep track of where these new customers are coming from, you can add those to your referral sources and put them in there. If you have more interest in that, look for articles in the Help Center or reach out to support for more info. Now in the warehouse, that's going to be where we're pulling our inventory from. And a lot of you probably only have one warehouse. This system has two, but it is defaulted. I'm going to say this is going out of my Salt Lake City warehouse. Okay. Next field here is of my client. That is obviously who my client's going to be. If they're already in my system, I can just start typing and just go, oh, that's who it is, and select them. If they're not, and we'll do this on the venue here, either if they can't, or if I go to search and I just find way too many Chris's in my system, I can click the magnifying glass next to it. First, this is going to give me a deeper search where I can better filter and look for more information to find that. But if I still can't find my customer, I can go to the bottom and add a new contact, and I can create that contact right here without losing any of my data. And when I'm done creating them, it will get added into that field. I'm not going to bother to do that in this example, but keep that in mind. I'm not going to go over the facility tab right now. As you see, this is grayed out. This is very relative to venues, and we'll go into that in future calls, future webinars. Next here, we've got this load in date, show start date, and load out date. And in a default system, they would be turned on, but there's a lot of dates available in the system that could be turned on, turned off, added as additional name, all sorts of things. We note that these dates are down here, while these two that I talked about earlier are up here with these red asterisks. The key thing is any math or calculation of availability is done by default on these dates, and these are just for your information dates. Something to just communicate some information, but they're not really doing any calculations, not doing any math, and so less important. But still can be very valuable in communicating the total what's going on for my event. Okay? We also have some other fields here, but a lot of times when I first start to create an event, I don't know that information yet. So it generally at this point, I'm just going to go ahead and hit OK and create that. Now, when I first create a new quote, there's a few things I want to double check here. It's going to load me the header of this document, and there's a few things here in the header that were not in my initial creation list that I want to review before we get into the next step. The main thing on this is some financial things of terms, tax rule, and discount. Terms has to do with what terms you're giving the customer, whether you're expecting them to pay in advance or they're going to get net or some combination. Those can be different for any customer and are editable in your system for that. Next is that sales tax rule. And again, in a default system, it's just going to say sales tax and tax exempt, though note that sales tax is not set up to be calculated because we don't know what the tax is where you are. And it may be that in your location, you have to set lots and lots of sales taxes in there. And so you'll want to look for a video or an article on editing and adding new sales tax. But just note you'd want to check that when you first create a new project. And then did you want to set some kind of a global discount for this customer? We also will refer to this as a standard discount. A default system will have a 10% in here, but many people will put lots of other ones in there that's completely up to you. Okay? So generally, those are the things I want to review. And once I've done that, we can start to get into building the quote, which we'll talk about in the next video. Thanks so much for your time. If you have any questions, reach out to support@flexrentalsolutions.com. And as always, keep flexing.